Hello card making friends, it's Sandy here and welcome back to my studio. Today I'm going to play with some Syberia Designs products and share some quick and easy ideas to add some depth to your die cutting. We're going to start off with the Trendy Botanicals, and we have a background of the Heart Garland cover die, and for our sentiments we're going to be using Thanks and Hugs. Once again, I've used my craft stack from Spellbinders to hold all of my die cut pieces, and they have a nice tight fitting lid and they stack. They are great for these kind of projects. Okay, we're going to be using not only a light and a dark of the cardstock, we're going to be using some distressed oxide inks, and I'm using Spice Marmalade, pine needles, and peacock feathers. And I'm just showing you the three pieces for this first die cut section. And using the Waffle Flower Zero Shader brushes, I am just quickly adding some ink to the bottom of the lighter of the pieces of the cardstock. Now I'm switching over to the green, which is pine needles, and a different brush, and I'm adding the highlights to the green part. And this is going to add some depth because the lighter color paper green is going to show through, but you've got the shadow of the darker. And you'll notice that I just cut off the whole stem of that background piece, and then I'm adding the lighter blue to the front of it, and this is Spellbinders Waterfall and Teal Topaz, and the green is Rainforest, and I'm doing an overlay with that piece. And then you're going to go back to the piece that you chopped off. You're going to grab that little bud, add a little bit of glue to the bottom of it, and pop it in the back of the little green stem, and there's your three-dimensional of this piece. And if you can darken it if you want to, I'm adding a little bit of green, okay, just showing you up close. Now, if you've already glued these together, you can also grab the little green piece, hold it down as an overlay, and you can use your brush to add some of the darker color to the blue, and this will stop the blue getting on the green for you. I discovered that totally by accident because I glued them together before I did it. Okay, next up we have the leaves, and again I've got them all in the Spellbinders Rainforest, and I'm using pine needles and the shadow brush. And I'm going to start at the bottom and add some of the darker color and pull it up almost to the center of each of the leaves. And I'm also going to darken the stem. All of those things are normally in the background or underneath another petal when you're putting a bouquet together, so it's natural to have a darker shadow there. Okay. And this is going to be a subtle effect, but it is very pretty. Next up we have these two little guys, and we're going to die cut the green stem, and then we have the light blue, which is the waterfall, for the little flowers on the top. And again, I'm adding some shadows to the bases, and the little overlays only cover about half of the green spot, so it's quite easy to put this together. But even though I'm going to add a little bit of highlight to this because I want the darker at the bottom of each one of them. So turn them around so that you can hold on to the top and add a little bit of the peacock feathers distressed oxide ink to each one of them. And now we're going to use our Barely Art Glue again to add these, and you can add glue to all 5 of them and then use your embellishment wand to pick up the pieces. And it's quite easy to see where you want to place these. The top of each of these pieces has a different kind of hill and valley in it, so you're just kind of looking for the one that matches and popping it on top. And I did 2 of these for my card today. Okay, just finding that final piece and making sure that they're all on there straight. There we go. Okay, the next piece is a 3-piece petal, and I am going to tuck it underneath the side of my large flower. So I've cut this again in 3 pieces. This time I'm using a beeswax and saffron, that's a light and a dark gold, and then the Rainforest again, adding a little bit of the pine needles ink to the bottom of it. I'm not going to add any ink to the 2 yellow pieces because they overlap fairly deeply, and it's kind of not worth it because you're not really going to see it. But there's a layer of those 3, and then we're going to move on to the largest flower. Again, a light and a dark yellow, and then there's a white center. For this one, I'm using Spiced Marmalade, and again, the Zero Shader brush. Starting at the center of the darker one, I'm going to pull the ink out from the center almost all the way to the tip. And remember, there's going to be a white center overlaying this, so you want to make sure you pull your color out far enough that it's not hidden completely by the center. And then I'm just going to go all the way around the edges of the lighter yellow, and this is going to define it when it gets onto the card. It's going to really add a little bit of depth. You don't think so when it's like this, but when you get it in with the rest of the colors, it really does make a difference. Okay, and we're just quickly working our way around, adding a little bit to the petals all the way. I'm doing a circular motion and trying not to get too far up. Okay, and just filling in a couple of spots that were a little bit skinny. Adding a little bit of glue to the center and lining up the two pieces. Okay, and then a little bit more glue to the center and adding the white. There we go. For my sentiment, I decided on the hugs and it out in black shadow with a white overlay, and I'm using my reverse tweezers and that awesome tip on the Barely Art glue to get just a tiny little bit of glue on there. And this is a two-piece sentiment, so you put the H in first and then the Ugs. Line that up on the other side and we're all ready to go. For my background, I did a tone on tone. I used the Heart Garland cover die and cut a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of white cardstock and taped it over my base. And so I've got the die cuts of the hearts and the little kind of strings. And for adding all of our art pieces, I'm using my No Stick Spellbinders scissors, and I have cut all of these little squares in half. That way they can get on the back of all the little tiny pieces, and even on the big pieces you only need a half, and that makes them go twice as far. So let's start putting our card together. I'm starting in the very background, adding the leaves. Okay, and I'm going top left, bottom right, adding a little bit of glue to the tips, and you'll notice that I only have a foam tape on the very tips, and that is because I want the tips to be higher but the bottom of the leaf or the flowers to be flat on the card. That way it makes it easier to mail. Okay, so I'm adding my little bulbs down here in the bottom left hand side, and then I've got these little guys in the top right. I don't know what either one of these flowers are called. Okay, and then let's call this a daisy. I'm putting my big daisy in the center and then coming along behind with that little bud and tucking it underneath. Okay, and I've got one leaf left, which is good. I've decided that there's a nice little bald spot there that I want to fix. Okay, and I'm just tucking that in. And then finally we're going to add our sentiment. Make sure it's right side up, and I'm putting it right smack in the middle of my flowers. For the embellishments, I decided on the Simon Says Stamps Clear Positively Dazzling Gems. I'm embracing my white background, so clear was kind of the natural choice. And this package, you have a variety of sizes, which I also like adding to my cards. I also like odd numbers, so a couple down at the bottom, a couple around the sentiment to highlight it, and 3 up the top right hand corner. And then again, you're going to use the Barely Art glue with the fine tip and glue these little guys down using the embellishment wand. That's it for my little card today. I hope you enjoyed it and that you will try adding a little bit of ink to your cards to add some depth to your die cutting. Everything I've used today is listed underneath this video. There's also a link over to my blog where you can get the card instruction details as well as thumbnails of the products used. And if you enjoyed today's video, please consider giving me a thumbs up and sharing it with your friends and leaving me a kind comment. I would really appreciate that. And toodles!